everybody. It is Lee Milteer. We have a very powerful guest and a very powerful topic that you really need to pay attention to. It is called the power of resilience during challenging times. Our expert guest is Dr. Ernesto Fernandez. He is a doctor of oriental medicine, acupuncture physician, a licensed medical health counselor. He practices in a great city, Sarasota, Florida. He now is doing telemedicine with clients all over the world. He's an entrepreneur who has spoken extensively around the United States and the world on entrepreneurial mental and physical health issues. And this is how I actually met Ernesto. So face it, folks, we are living in unprecedented and challenging times, and it is truly taking a toll on business owners, not only mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially. And it's keeping us in this fight or flight response with our nervous system. So every day there seems to be a new trauma that we have to deal with. So I have reached out to someone I personally use to oversee my health, who is going to share with us some practical and usable solutions, not only for ourselves, so we don't become unresourceful, but I highly recommend that you also share this information with your family and with your staff and your team, because let's face it, when people are in fear, they're not very resourceful. So I'm going to give you a short bio of Dr. Fernandez. He began his career in the healing arts in 1984, from seeking to heal for himself from chronic pain and a mood disorder because of the multiple injuries and concussions he had as a high school wrestler. Now, that's very interesting, isn't it? He is the author of The Healer's Journey. He has written many articles. He is a popular lecturer, professional speaker, healthcare consultant, and again, as I said, travel internationally teaching intensives on cutting edge body, mind therapies and techniques. He specializes in integrating functional medicine, restorative medicine, clinical nutrition, energy medicine, and on and on and on, which I will share with you in his bio. But our topic today, let me say one more time, is the power of resilience during challenging times. And so I'd like to welcome Ernesto. Say hello.
Hi, Lee. Thank you for having me on this program.
We're very happy that you're here. So Ernesto, in one of the speeches I heard that you gave not too long ago, you said that a Charles Darwin quote completely transformed how you work with people. And the quote was, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but those that are most adaptive to change." So my question to you is, what drew your interest to learning about being resilient?
Great question, Lee. I kind of have to say I came by it not because I found it interesting, is because I had to climb out of a hole. I got myself into a number of challenges. As entrepreneurs, we tend to kind of rely on our strengths, and our strengths become kind of our superpowers. And in my case, I unfortunately was a very bright person. And so I would rely very much on my intellect and my thinking, my problem solving skills. I've also been a person who had a lot of energy. So I kind of ran my life on those two things. And so at one point I grew my business to such a point that I could not, my energy level, even though it was high, I could not sustain the demands that it was requiring of me, plus family, plus yada, yada, yada. And so there came a point, to make a long story short, where I had multiple fronts of disasters happening in my life, where the things I relied on most just weren't showing up. My stress level was so high that my old concussion issues were showing up that I could not think the way I was used to thinking. My energy level tanked, so I couldn't, muster the energy to do the kind of things. So I was like dead in the water. there's a whole other set of skills that I didn't develop. I call them vulnerabilities or leaks, if you will, that I could not draw from. So I crashed. My life, it was a mess. And I had to say, uncle, my best thinking got me into the mess that I was in. And this is a while back. And then I had to just kind of, okay, I had to surrender. Okay, I'll do whatever, God, you tell me. You know, I sought help. I had to be very humble. I mean, I was humbled. I didn't seek humble. I was humbled by my choices. And I wasn't aware that I had some weaknesses in my values, had some weaknesses in my character, had a number of things that really weakened my resilience. And all these things led me, as I started to kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together again, I realized, wow, these are the things that set me up for the breakdown, if you will. And in working with my clients, I recognized, wow, I'm not the only one. I felt really bad about it. I felt like embarrassed and ashamed. You know, I'm a bright guy. How to get myself in this mess? Then I realized, my gosh, everybody has this to some degree. Not everybody falls that hard. And even my clients who come to me because they have some chronic health issues, when you really uncover like what got them there, it's the same kind of stuff. We tend to over rely on certain things and to our own detriment, and we ignore some other fundamental skills that we needed to develop, but in some ways we're like a little retarded or immature about these other aspects of ourselves. So for when we need to draw on them, it's not developed. So that's how I got here. That's a short version.
So one of the things that I've always liked about you, Ernesto, is one, your willingness to be very transparent about your own journey. And as an entrepreneur, I think you being a doctor and an entrepreneur is a perfect fit for us at Millionaire Smarts, because we all, I'm going to speak for all of us, we think we're supermen and superwomen. And I have dealt with you for many years, and a lot of your advice to me has been, you know, Lee, you really aren't superwoman because you're now financing all of your success physically, and you're just going to run out of steam if you don't sort of refinance from different areas. And I'm very excited that you're here, because I think this is a message that is very needed for our entrepreneurs, that we don't seem to be getting enough rest. Our boundaries have gotten weak. We seem to be very externally focused, thinking that we can just, you know, sort of power our way through all the trauma. But eventually, as leaders, we're going to just totally run out of steam, and we can't be true leaders to those people who are around us. So I haven't heard anyone really discuss being resilient in relationship to the body, especially regarding to the nervous system. And I mentioned that we have fight or flight response, and many of us are having that right now with our nervous system, and a lot of people are making decisions out of fear. So talk to us about the whole fight and flight thing response.
Okay, now let's back up a second. A lot of the literature, there's great literature out there on resilience. A lot of it focuses on what I consider the third aspect, and they missed the entire, first two parts of it, or at least they touch on it but don't go too deep. And they focus on how you use your mind, how you use your focus and attention to really get through difficult times. But I think the first part is you have to learn how to use your body properly, and then also how you feed and nourish your body. So when you talk about the fight-flight mechanism, it's what we have in common with animals. I mean, we're animals. We're mammals, and when we have a situation that's very stressful for us, that's difficult for us, it's very common for us to have a stress response. In the stress response, for some people, they feel scared, they shut down, they get quiet, they panic. Others get aggressive. Others get more protective. They get more vocal, and that's just part of temperament and part of your conditioning and what you're used to. And so our goal is, what I help my clients do, is to recognize that sometimes it becomes a lifestyle for us to be in and out of this, frequently visiting this fight-flight mechanism, fight-flight response. And it becomes normal for us, and oftentimes we think that we're doing okay, but our body is in this heightened state of stress all the time. But we become habituated to it, and we don't even recognize it. It becomes the quote new normal for us, but it wears you down. Actually, it makes you weaker over time because it uses up a lot of energy reserves. It burns up your mineral reserves. It can actually burn up your hormone reserves. And then when you actually really need it for something really big and stressful, at some point it's not going to show up. And part of the work I do with my clients is to help them ratchet down and downshift from that new normal that they've gotten used to like to find what real relaxed and calm and present really feels like. Most of us get lost to what that really is. That's what baseline is, and then you stress from there, and it's a much gentler, kinder way to treat your body and to prepare you to have real resilience when something stressful really happens. Then now you can respond to it much quicker in a way that you have more of your brain, more of your frontal lobe, because when we are reacting in a fight-flight mechanism, we're using our reptilian brain, which we have in common with reptiles, and then our limbic part of our brain, which is emotional response, which we have in common with other animals. Well, those are not good places to make good decisions from. And as entrepreneurs, as business people, we have to make a lot of decisions. And if you're in the stress state, you're going to miss a lot of details making decisions. So you need to learn how to get to your frontal lobe and make decisions from there. How do you draw the energy from this part of your brain to this part of your brain? And there's a number of different ways to do that. And one way is to interrupt that whole process is ask yourself some questions. And one question can be, to get really specific, what is actually happening right now? What are the actual details of what's happening right now? Because we often tend to jump to conclusions and judgments and opinions about what's happening right now, and we make it bigger than it really is. But if we can break it down to, okay, right now, I don't like what's happening. So-and-so says something I didn't like. I don't like the fact that these people canceled without letting me know. You get as factual about what it is versus drawing all sorts of telling a story about what happened. That now gets you here versus being run back here. To put it in a perspective or analogy, if you're in a car that's moving and you're the only one in the car, would you want to be riding in the back seat and letting the car go wherever it goes, or do you want to be in the front seat managing the steering wheel and the brakes and the gas?
Well, that's pretty obvious. We want to be in the front seat and control. We're all control freaks, so yes, we want to be in the front seat control.
Yeah, but we want to be driving the car ourselves. However, most of us are not driving our own nervous systems. We're in the back seat meaning the back of our brain. That's where we're living in the stress state, trying to run our lives. And then we have all these wrecks we often have to deal with in our relationships. We end up saying things that create 5 times more problems because we're responding from back here. We make financial decisions from a place of anger or fear, which afterwards we find, okay, now that led to 3 other negative unintended consequences that we didn't think through because we could not make a decision from here.
Okay, so a lot of people are listening to this on audio. So when you say from here, you're actually talking about the front part of your hand, your brain versus the back part of your brain, right?
Oh yeah, okay, this is an audio recording. Okay, I thought there's a video. All right.
Well, it is video also, but it also will be to audio to many people.
Okay, I apologize. I'll reference what I'm touching.
Okay, so I had a conversation with you a few weeks ago, and I don't even remember what it was, but your advice to me was very profound because you said, Lee, uh, where are you? You're not even in the present. You're actually in the future, and you're allowing your imagination to create all kinds of stories of horrible things that are going to happen in the future, which is affecting you and making you unhappy. So the only power that you have is right now at this second in time. And that was very profound for me, Ernesto, because I've actually written little notes. I've got these wonderful little yellow sticky notes everywhere. It says, be in the now, be in the now. That's where all your power is. And talking about getting amnesia, because I know that, but in the last part of every speech I give on stage is your point of power is the second in time. So do something powerful. And yet I even forgot that, and I teach the stuff. And I know that every entrepreneur and business owner who is engaging in what I call very negative behavior of getting involved with the news or even a lot of social media right now, there's nothing but just really negative, negative, negative. And so what advice do you have for people about how they're actually volunteering to create this chaos for themselves by engaging in those behaviors?
Yes. Discernment is a very important skill. In fact, I say resilience is something that can be learned. I consider deep resilience. It's a set of skills of having discernment over the things that really strengthen you and keep you even and balanced, and those things that just leak your energy out and drain you and make things harder for you. So one thing to recognize is that everything matters. Everything matters. And oftentimes we make little decisions. Oh, well, just a little bit won't hurt me. Okay. And for example, you're referencing the news. Some people are a bit more sensitive than others, and we have to understand, what is our sensitivity level. But but in general, our nervous systems can handle only so much bad news at a time. That's just a fact. Okay, and so what are you seeking when you watch the news? Are you looking for data points, or are you looking for emotional confirmation? What is it that's happening for you as to why? So, for example, for me, I take a lot of media breaks where I maybe 2 days a week I'll watch maybe 30 minutes of news, and I'll selectively online find certain things I want to know. If I were to have the news all the time, even if I have it in the background while I'm doing computer work or something, that information comes in, and there is something called the subconscious. It influences us. And it's important to be informed, but informed doesn't mean you have to have hours and hours of repetition of the same information. It's think of your mind and your brain, your nervous system as a computer. And right now, fortunately, computers are pretty powerful. They can have multiple software programs going. But there comes a point, if you have too many programs open at the same time, what happens to the performance of your computer? The whole dang thing starts to slow down. And you get these little wheels that turn. And if you have a Mac, and I'm not sure what it is for a PC, so if you want to be optimal in your energy level and your focus and decision making, you have to really manage how many chunks of information you're trying to manage at one time, particularly if it's emotionally charged information. One of our mutual mentors, Dan Kennedy, he used to talk about compartmentalizing. And that is a useful skill. I think there's a higher level skill than just compartmentalizing, which is, how do you metabolize that information quickly so you don't hold that energy in your body at all? Okay, if something distressful happens, how do you discharge that in an efficient way? So it's like hitting delete empty trash. So now that's not taking up any space in your system. Okay, so I'm more for that approach. And also to extend on this, engaging in relationships and friendships. There's some people, there's some buddies, we're great guys to go play basketball with. That's about it. There's certain discussions I will never have with them because it will just not end well because of the differences in our personalities and interests. And if I try to engage certain things with them, it's going to create a stressful response. And that's just, I'm not going to change them. And then good luck in trying to change me. So we have to mutually respect each other. So a lot of times I see people try to engage in conversations with folks that will never be productive because there's just such a gap in values or even in their emotional maturity. Some people are compromised, and it's important to develop that discernment. If you don't have good resilience, who is emotionally compromised, and a certain conversation you don't have with them because it's going to trigger them. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but then you can be pulled into something which could take hours of your time. And it doesn't serve anybody.
Well, speaking of hours at a time, as you know, I have a lot of one-on-one coaching clients, and most of them confess to me, which is very interesting, that they mean to go into social media, or we'll just take Facebook as an example, and they only mean to go in and post with the concept of, I'm just staying in touch, making people remember me. I'm a business person, and, try to do something. And then 3 hours later, I sort of wake up from the trance that I have gotten myself involved with arguments, and someone has either unfriended me or I've unfriended them. I seem to have almost 2 women last week said to me, I realize I might actually have an addiction to the energy of it, that I keep going back. I don't mean to go back, but the next thing I know, I'm there and I'm just scanning down. What advice would you give those people who know intellectually that they're falling into a hole that is not going to end well, but they seem compelled to do so?
That happens a lot, Lee, more than you think. And when I work with people, one of my main objectives is to help them identify what their vulnerabilities and leaks are. A lot of times we don't even recognize that we have these things. It's good your friends finally identified, wow, I have this going on. Because these things can be turned around, but you can't, I call this the 3 A's. And I didn't invent this, but I think it's brilliant. The first one is awareness. Having awareness of where you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And then the second one, actually most people jump from number 1 to number 3. And that's a classic entrepreneur, okay? Where from awareness, you want to jump to action. Like fix it. Okay, yes. Change it. And, and sometimes that works, but sometimes when we skip the middle step, we end up creating more problems because when we skip this middle important step because we missed perspective, and that middle step is called acceptance. Is be able to accept and really understand, why this is going on with us. This didn't just show up out of nowhere. And when you can really make friends with that, and part of resilience is making friends with reality. That's the number one best. I have a longer definition for resilience, but that's like the best one, the shortest one I have. You're just able to make friends with reality under all circumstances. And there are many times you're not supposed to change reality. You just make friends with it. But as entrepreneurs, our nature is we want to change reality. But But the biggest powerful thing I learned, a lot of times when you make friends with it, there's nothing to change.
Okay, so give us the long definition. One, I really like this. I'm taking notes. Awareness, acceptance, and then we like to jump right into action. Yes, I'm guilty of all those things. Um, eh, so the longer definition of resilience. So share with us what that is.
Okay. So there's 5 very key, I call skills in resilience. So one is energy. The second is strength. The third is character. The fourth is awareness. And the fifth is ability. And we can drill down these further in a minute if you want to. And with these 5 skills, these are all learnable and applicable. You do very specific actions with it. And number 1 is, like I mentioned earlier, you're able to make friends with reality under all circumstances. And the second one is you're able to withstand adversity. And the third is you're able to focus on productive and purposeful activities, which means you tune out everything that's not purposeful and productive. The fourth one is you know your limits. And fifth is you're able to have great sensitivity. And we can unpack that further if you want. I mean, there's a lot to that, but that's like, and what I call, it's part of what I call the resilience formula. I think I coined that term. I haven't seen it anywhere else, but that's like, these are the things that you have these things together, you are, imperturbable. Bad things can be going around you and you are like solid.
Bulletproof.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure bulletproof, but you can definitely endure the bullet better to get to the hospital versus just lay there and bleed,
Right. Okay, so a lot of people are laying around bleeding and have a lot of victim mentality. So let's drill down into those skills, because that's what our entrepreneurs really like. They like actionable things. It's all nice to think about things, but for the most part, they really need a handle of what to be doing. And I'd like to remind everybody this month, please do go to the membership site, because Ernesto has been so kind and he has specifically written just for us 4 great reports that are going to help you master your nervous system and develop resilience. And these are very, very helpful and very clear on things that you can do. So go ahead, Ernesto. Give us some strength to not necessarily be bulletproof, but at least a lot stronger.
Right. Have the energy to get to the hospital after you've been shot.
Well, hopefully none of us will get shot, but yes, okay. Get to the hospital in our own world.
So the first 2 are physical, which is energy, and it begins and dies with energy. There's a famous football coach called Vince Lombardi, and one of his famous quotes is, "Fatigue will make cowards out of any of us."
Fatigue will make cowards out of any of us?
Correct.
Wow.
And he understood that in the fourth quarter of the football game, the team that has the most energy is the one that's most likely to win. The one that's tired is going to tank, and they can't go for those hard plays. And that is an amazing metaphor for life. So you have to do all the different things that help you generate good, healthy, sustainable energy. And I'm not talking about drinking a lot of coffee. That's empty energy. And a metaphor I use with my clients is like, you have to use your body for how it's designed to be used. For example, I've done some triathlon training, and imagine trying to take a road bike, or a bike that you would normally do on a triathlon, and try and do mountain biking with that. How far would you get?
Not very far, I don't think.
The bike would get all torn up, bent up. You'll get hurt. 'cause you try to make it do something that it can't do. So as entrepreneurs, we're notorious, and I've been guilty of it myself, to make our bodies do things that it's not designed to do or have the support or energy to do. And so there's a way to eat that helps sustain and have more energy. How you do your sleep patterns, different forms of exercise. I'm a big proponent and supporter of different types of Qigong exercises, way to cultivate internal energy in yourself. Breathing exercises, so you learn how to draw energy from your environment into your body to boost you. So you're not just chemically dependent on just food and supplements. And there is a place for herbs and there is a place for supplements to have really good, strong energy. But don't rely on just one thing. The more of these things you incorporate into your lifestyle, the more sustainable energy you have. You want to build reserve. It's about building, like you have financial reserves for a rainy day, you want to have energy reserves for that. Suddenly the bottom drops out and oops, now I got to do a 16-hour day. But if you've been pushing 12-hour days for weeks or months, it's going to be hard to like really, because see, people hire me for, not just because they have chronic health issues, is when they're going through a personal or professional hell and they want to survive it. But most people, they tell me, Ernesto, can you just help me get through this? It's like, no, I'm not going to help you get through this. I'm going to help you live through this. So you come out actually stronger at the end. But as entrepreneurs, oftentimes we think, let's just get through this. And we white knuckle it, we hunker down, and afterwards, what do you have? A lot of burnout, a lot of physical symptoms, a lot of stuff to repair afterwards. And it doesn't have to be that way. So, whenever I can work with someone, like before the big disaster hits, that's optimal. But even when you're in it, okay, like what can you do to start building your energy and preserving your energy? Saying no a lot to a lot of requests and demands that are coming at your way. So you can focus on what's absolutely necessary.
So when I've worked with you over the years, burnout for me has been an issue because I'm one of those who focuses and, no matter hell or high water, I will go over it, above it, through it, but somehow I will do what I said I was going to do. And I know in a lot of our sessions, you have talked about boundaries and saying no, but also to remind myself to ask a question to myself before I say yes. And the question that I now have up here that really came from you is, do I have the available energy to do this extra project and still be able to do all the things that is necessary of me? And when I am present enough, and that word is very important, being present, Ernesto, I'm going to say a good 80% of the time, myself will say to me, no, you don't have any more available energy to put in hours today or to give to other people, that you need to go rest. You need to nurture your body more. And if you're not taken care of, the whole business, will collapse because you are the business. So you've been very helpful about that. So you've talked about energy and burnout and boundaries. So what would be the next thing?
The next one is actually strength, physical strength, and how you exercise your body. And this is important on many levels, not just about muscles and joints and things like that, but our brain is 2/3 of it is designed for movement and balance. And if you're not using your brain through movement and challenging your balance on a regular basis, the way we're designed, that 2/3 of your brain gives energy and protects the 1/3 of your brain that's involved with decision making, focus, concentration, memory, emotional regulation. Okay, so this developing the strength is both a physical and a neurological thing. So you have to build in meaningful exercise within your, capacity and your health level. So you can actually have endurance to endure when some difficulty happens, and actually give your brain adequate energy.
So what kind of, so I know you personally, so I know that in the last few years you've become a big dancer. You like to go out and dance and you're having fun. A lot of people think, oh, I don't really have time to exercise, but exercise doesn't have to be boring. Going out and dancing sounds like a hell of a fun way to stimulate your brain. It certainly would encompass balance and dancing and having a good time and socializing. I know, as you say, you've been an athlete your entire life. So for the people who have gotten out of that, besides dancing, and what are things that they can do that you recommend? It's like one of the things I love to do is I have a rebound machine or a bouncer thing, and I love to get on that in the first thing in the morning. It's very helpful for me to sort of, I believe you have to have your brain engaged before you start to work. You can't just go have coffee and pump yourself up with caffeine. You actually have to do physical exercise to get your brain balanced.
I completely agree. All the research is very clear. The more, if you can get your exercise in before you start your work day, your brain is going to be so much sharper. Your ability to handle stress is so much better. The rebounder is great, particularly if you have joint issues. It's very easy in your body. If you haven't done anything like that in a long time, I recommend you wear shoes with it, because otherwise you'll hate us afterwards.
Yes, definitely wear shoes.
And start slow and build up. But even walking is a place to start if you've been, a couch potato for many years. And I'm glad you mentioned the dancing. That is one of the most complex and sophisticated forms of movement. To really engage to really challenge your brain and your entire body. When I go dancing, I dance nonstop for 4 hours. I don't take a single break. Maybe to get a sip of water, but I just kind of go. It's a serious workout for me, and I have a blast. And at home, you can put on your tunes, dance by yourself, dance with your sweetheart. It doesn't have to be a super hard, intense, swing dance or something like that. You just get things moving, and it doesn't matter what form of dance. Weight training is very good at a different type of effect. Aerobic exercise on a bicycle, it almost doesn't matter. Start somewhere in a way that you're not going to hurt yourself. And if you haven't had any medical attention in a while, have a doctor check you out to see your heart's up for it and things like that. It's prudent to do.
Okay, so we've now talked about energy, burnout, boundaries, and exercise. So what would be another avenue we should talk about?
This is kind of a controversial one and a hard one. Character development. And it's often referred to as virtues, and really developing that. And the opposite of those is what is often referred to as the 7 deadly sins, and where we often easily fall into. And as entrepreneurs, I know that I cringe still. At times I would fall into wrath, when I get really angry, and I let someone really have it, didn't do their job right and really mess something up. And not only is it unproductive to do that, it not only does it hurt the relationship, but it hurts you doing it as well, not just the other person. What that stress does to your system. So I highly recommend, I think, you can Google what the virtues are, the number of them. I think I list them in one of my articles, and I map out what the virtues are versus when you're off the mark or getting involved in those deadly sins, and also body systems that are affected. For example, if you're a person who tends to get angry very easily, how that really negatively impacts your liver and your gallbladder function. And interestingly enough, from an oriental medicine point of view, the liver is involved, associated with a part of the brain that's involved with planning. And the gallbladder is involved with part of the brain that's involved with decision making. So if you're constantly taxing due to constant irritation and frustration and anger, these two major organs, how optimal are you going to be in your planning and decision making? It's going to be impaired. So a lot of people think, well, I'm pretty good at it. Well, you may be pretty good at it, but you're probably far suboptimal to what you could be. So I can list a few of the character development. So once patience and forgiveness, empathy, very, very important. Having prudence and discernment. I mentioned discernment earlier. In fact, that's closely related with your small intestines. And when people have problems with their small intestine function, a lot of their discernment gets impaired. Their decision, they start making poor decisions. So they become more irrational, more illogical, more reckless. So a lot of times when we think something is an emotional, psychological problem, or it could be originating from a physical problem for a person. Self-restraint, equanimity. I love equanimity, which is being very psychologically even, that imperturbable, that stuff is going on around you, people are upset, bad news, and you are still very present. You don't get pulled into that. You're in a way kind of detached. You still feel, but you're not pulled into it. There's a biblical reference that says, live in this world but not be of it. And that is I think is very much exemplifies the equanimity, where, you take action from a present point of view, not from an emotionally hooked or engaged point of view. In fact, when we really boil down to it, a lot of marketing, and we both have studied a lot of marketing,
yes,
is really emotionally hook people to yes. make decisions. And one way to kind of be immune to marketing is to develop this equanimity. So you can see what's going on, and you can make a decision out of whether or not I really need that versus getting hooked by the story. Marketers don't like me teaching people this, but it is what it is. So character development, and then humility. Humility was a really big one for me, very hard one, because whenever you have, not just for me, for many of us who are accomplished and very bright, arrogance slips in there. That we think, oh, I can handle this. A lot of times, no, I need more help than I've been willing to admit. And I've had a tendency, and many of my clients have a tendency, a lot of times they come to see me because they've taken on bigger challenges that they actually have the resources, emotionally, financially, mentally, socially, and then they break down because this is a bigger obstacle than they imagined. And I've been guilty of it many times, and it's just part of the nature of our personality. So it's having the humility to say, I need help. Or I'd like to do that, but not right now. I may have to wait a few months or maybe a couple of years before I can take that on, because I don't have the foundation or the system in place to really fully take advantage of that without having negative consequences.
So how does ego take part in this? Because ego is a very big thing in not only in the world, but obviously in the entrepreneur and business world. We have images of ourselves. Our self-image is that I can handle anything, I can do anything, and so there's sometimes when we're facing challenges, I think our ego sometimes gets a little too full of itself, and it bites off more than we can chew, and then we're in this dilemma of suddenly realizing I'm not resilient here. I really didn't have a good foundation to do this, but somehow I felt compelled to do this. And I've noticed in myself that if I ask myself that question, sometimes it's, the ego sort of took over. Of course I can do this. I've done it in the past. I even say one of my favorite sayings is we always land on our feet, but that's actually not true. We often land on our ass and trying to get.
Heads and on their face.
So let's talk about how do you catch your ego to not bite off more than we can chew?
Well, that's a very profound question. And as you know, I've studied a lot of different traditions. And I mean, I've studied Zen very extensively. And I just said, and practiced. And Taoist principles and Buddhist principles and Christianity and Stoicism. And all these things, what they have in common are, different attitudes and values and beliefs and techniques to really mature your nervous system, to keep you humble, to recognize, your place in the world, and to not see yourself, at least see myself, as bigger than what I am. To understand that I have great capacities and capabilities, and in the big scheme of things, I'm this itty bitty little grain of speck in this like giant thing, okay? And if I'm trying to move this big giant thing, how's this little speck going to do it by itself? It needs other things in place, other people, other forces, if you will. So that's how I encourage my clients, is to practice a number of different principles to really get that physical experience of, wow, I'm just this one person. I'm an important person. I mean, I contribute to the world, but wow, I was thinking way too highly of myself. And that's a process, and it's a very hard process for us. And unfortunately, many people come to that place out of hitting a bottom of some sort, and then kind of reconfigure themselves. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to suddenly give me a really bad diagnosis, or having to lose your business, or not going through a divorce, or your child will no longer talk to you now because of. It doesn't have to be that way. But unfortunately, at least for myself, I was very hard-headed, as bright and educated, and even in the health field, and a mental health professional. I was so hard-headed that it took hitting a hard bottom to kind of awaken to surrender. So one of the techniques or principles I use is to, how do I align my ego? Because you can't get rid of your ego, but you can downsize it to a normal size. But then how do you align it with a higher purpose? So it's not just my want and desire, because that's very selfish. It's like, what's my calling and my higher purpose here? And how am I fitting in this, what am I called to do versus what I think I should be doing, or others are wanting me to do. And so that's, developing more of a spiritual orientation, if you will. And that's been really, really helpful to me. And for my clients to be able to tap into that. But that's a higher order function. Sometimes before you can really do some of these deeper cognitive reframing things and cognitive rehab things with a person, you have to repair their bodies first. You have to really get the energy levels up. You have to balance out their hormones. Whatever toxicity is built up there that's impairing their thought processes, you have to sort that out. So then they can consider some really challenging mental processes, because this requires energy to think differently from how you've been operating for a good part of your life.
So the next question I had for you is, a lot of us business owners are rescuers. and we take on other people's problems. So it's not like we don't have enough problems of our own to discern and use our energy for, but I know I've been guilty of being a rescuer to other people, keeping people longer than I should have in my employee at my company because somehow I felt sorry for them. How do you, so we're not talking about ego anymore, but how do you put yourself first and be resilient with just so many people crashing and burning around you? And there's just a sadness to see our world in this crashing and burning.
Okay, so run the question by me again.
How can we not be a rescuer and not give our power and energy away to people who are floundering, that we often will take on their problems and not just focus on our own? And I'm trying to say, I know a lot of my clients actually wear out all their energy, their mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial energy rescuing other people where they actually should be rescuing themselves.
Correct. Yeah, that's a pandemic that's not being discussed. That a lot of people have that, and it's a rewiring of your operating system. It took a lot of rewiring on my part to really understand, like, in a day I have X number of units of energy. Let's pick a round number, 100 units. And how am I going to use those 100 units so I save for the next day? And how much of those do I need for me? And how much of that do I have to give for others and to my business? And really be mindful of that. It requires a fair bit of awareness, which is like the next skill in resilience, and having that awareness of where are you, how much do you really need? Some of us are more high maintenance than others in terms of how much self-care we need to be optimal. And some people don't need that much. But my experience has been, when I'm working with fairly highly productive people, they require way more maintenance than they recognize. And when we really get that level of maintenance built into their lives, their quality of life improves exponentially. That they have no idea how good it could possibly get. And once you have a feel for that, you don't want to give that up. So now you want to be protective of that. It doesn't mean that you don't serve, doesn't mean you don't give. But to make it, so to answer your question, there's a lot of dimensions, lots of pieces to fully turn that around in a person. It's not like a quick solution, but a good question that anyone can use to really interrupt that process of rescuing is, what's my motive for doing this?
What is my motive for doing this? Ooh,
yes, what is my motive for doing this? Okay.
And would you say that most people can't even answer that?
Most people can't even answer that. If you can't answer that adequately, then you shouldn't do it. So are you trying to feel good about yourself? Are you trying to get some attaboys for doing it? Are you trying to feel important? Do you have guilt? I mean, none of those are good reasons to do it. And I've done them all, and because sometimes, we're trying to atone for something that we did in some other relationship. We're trying to atone for it in this one. And that's not the way to do it. Especially, it doesn't mean that we can't be helpful, but you have to do it in a way that isn't hurtful to you or enabling or being codependent with the other person. That you're doing for them something that they could be doing for themselves. I mean, I donate money, I donate time, I do lots of things, but I have to do it within a context that's really of service and not creating another problem for myself or someone else.
Yes, I think that is very well put. And I would love to talk to you many more hours, but we're almost, our time is up. So first, tell everybody how they can find you.
Yes. my website is ernestojfernandez.com, and my phone number is 941-923-0283. And parting words is resilience isn't something that you're born with. Some of us have some natural resilience in some areas than others, but it's all learnable. And we can develop these strengths so you can be more adaptable to whatever circumstances in life. And life becomes much more enjoyable when you know that you can handle a lot more of what comes your way.
Well, I want to thank you for your wisdom very much. I think this is a perfect time to hear this message. I think there's a lot of people who have sort of lost their way of remembering that if I don't take care of the core me first, it's sort of like the airlines, when they tell you to put the mask on before you put the mask on somebody else. I think that's a great visual for all of us to remember. We have to put the mask on ourselves. And I just like to say before we leave today that your point of self-care, I happen to be one of those high need self-care people because I'm an empath, I'm sensitive, I'm intuitive. I have to be very careful not to pick up other people's energy, especially if I'm very tired and exhausted. And because of you, I go to bed at 9 o'clock. I keep this very strict, I have to take care of myself to do a good job for everybody else. And I think that that is something all of us need to hear on a regular basis because we are the rescuers of the world. And I think I think our motto has to be, we rescue ourselves. So thank you very much, Dr. Fernandez. And folks, I highly recommend going to his website, checking in with him, signing up for any e-zines or anything that he has. I've personally worked with him for a very long time, and it's always nice to have a voice of reason in one's life. Thank you so much, folks. We're going to call it a wrap. Last words are, your point of power is this very moment. Stay in your power. Thank you, everybody.